I woke up beside a vampire nurse. She giggled softly and said you held my hand all night. Marcus Chen's eyes cracked open to a world of soft blue light and the steady hum of medical equipment. His head felt like someone had stuffed it with cotton, and his body ached in places he didn't know could ache. The last thing he remembered was screaming. Lots of screaming. His colony transport had been under attack, and then there was pain, so much pain that his mind had simply shut down to protect itself. But now there was something else. Something cold pressed against his right hand. Not unpleasantly cold, but cool like marble on a summer day. He turned his head slowly, fighting against the stiffness in his neck, and found himself staring at the most unusual woman he had ever seen. She sat in a chair beside his bed, her posture relaxed but alert. Her skin was pale, almost luminescent in the dim lighting, with a faint blue tint that suggested she had never seen natural sunlight. Dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and her eyes were a deep crimson that seemed to glow softly in the darkness. She wore medical scrubs that marked her as staff, and a small badge on her chest read, Nurse Alara Sanguivori. "Good morning, Marcus Chen," she said, and then she giggled. It was a soft, musical sound that seemed completely at odds with her intimidating appearance. "You held my hand all night. Actually, you held it for 3 nights. Every time I tried to leave, you would grab on tighter." But humans, she looked down at their joined hands with something like wonder. Humans are different. The walls curved organically, and the equipment looked more grown than built. Through a large viewport, he could see stars streaking past in that peculiar way that meant they were traveling faster than light. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice rough from disuse. "The hospital ship Mercy's Dawn," Alara explained, finally releasing his hand so she could check the monitors above his bed. "We picked up the distress call from your colony transport 4 days ago. By the time we arrived, the Cravathi had already left. You were the only survivor. There were these, warriors, insect-like. One of them stabbed me with its tail. I felt poison burning through my veins. It's why the Cravathi are so feared. They don't need weapons when their own bodies are deadly to everyone they meet. That's what I've been trying to figure out for 3 days. By all rights, you should have died within 5 minutes of being stung. But your body, it's doing something impossible. Your immune system is adapting, changing, fighting the venom in ways I've never seen. You've had 17 separate fever spikes, each one that should have killed you, and each time I thought I'd lost you. But then you'd squeeze my hand, and your vitals would stabilize. It's rewriting itself in real time, learning to neutralize the venom. No other species can do this. The Sanguivori, my people, were considered the best doctors in the galaxy because we understand blood on an instinctive level. But what your body is doing naturally. We couldn't replicate this with 1,000 years of research. Your body has just learned to contain it, to neutralize it as it spreads. It's a constant battle happening inside you right now. That's why you're exhausted. Your immune system is working overtime." Red lights flashed in the corridor outside the medical bay. Alara's head snapped toward the door, her expression shifting from calm professionalism to something approaching fear. A voice crackled over the intercom, speaking in a language Marcus didn't recognize. But he didn't need a translation to understand the urgency in the tone. "What's happening?" he asked, trying to sit up despite the protests from his aching muscles. Alara moved to a console and pulled up a tactical display. Cravathi ships. 3 of them dropping out of FTL right on top of us. She looked back at Marcus, and he saw understanding dawn in her crimson eyes. "They're not here by accident, they're here for you." "Why?" "If your immunity spreads to other humans, if it can be replicated or turned into a treatment, the Cravathi lose their greatest advantage. They can't let that information get out." The lights flickered, and somewhere in the distance, Marcus heard the sound of tearing metal. A figure appeared in the doorway, a tall reptilian creature with scales that shimmered like oil on water. She wore a captain's uniform, and her vertical pupils fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made him feel like prey. "Nurse Alara," the captain hissed, her translator rendering her words in perfect English. "How mobile is the human? He has maybe 20 minutes before the Cravathi board us." Captain Vora moved into the room, her movements fluid and predatory. "They've disabled our FTL drive with some kind of pulse weapon. We're dead in space. Always so eager to fight even when they can barely stand. I see why the Cravathi fear you." She turned to Alara. Can you extract his antibodies? Create some kind of counteragent to the venom? If I push it too hard, it could collapse entirely. Alara looked at him, and for a moment Marcus saw genuine emotion flash across her pale face. Marcus, you don't understand what you're agreeing to. This isn't like donating blood. I'll have to keep you conscious throughout the process while I essentially trick your body into mass-producing antibodies. The pain will be. I trust you. The Cravathi won't breach the medical bay without going through me first. She paused at the door. For what it's worth, human, your species has honor. The galaxy could use more of that. Then she was gone, her voice echoing down the corridor as she shouted orders to her crew. Alara worked quickly, hooking Marcus up to machines that looked more like living things than technology. Tubes filled with softly glowing liquid connected to his arms, and a crown of sensors settled onto his head. I need you to stay as still as possible, Alara said, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. I'm going to introduce a synthetic pathogen into your bloodstream, not enough to harm you, but enough to make your immune system think you're under attack. It should trigger a massive antibody response. Our nervous systems are different, but I've read enough about humans to know this will hurt. It helped, she agreed. When she activated the machines, Marcus understood why she had apologized. It felt like liquid fire was being pumped through his veins. Every nerve in his body screamed in protest. His muscles locked up, and he would have thrashed right off the bed if not for the restraints he hadn't noticed Alara securing. But through it all, he felt her hand in his, cool and steady and real. He focused on that sensation, using it as an anchor against the storm of pain. That's it, Alara's voice came from somewhere far away. Your body is responding. I can see the antibodies multiplying. Just a little longer, Marcus. Stay with me. Through the haze of pain, Marcus heard weapons fire and the distinctive sound of hull breaches. The Cravathi were coming. Alara's crimson eyes were fixed on her monitors, her expression intense with concentration. 60%, she muttered. Come on, come on. Faster. I'm sorry. This is going to break every medical protocol in existence. Instead, he felt a strange sense of completion, as if this was always meant to happen. Alara pulled back, Marcus's blood on her lips. Her eyes were glowing now, bright as stars, and her pale skin had taken on a faint luminescence. She gasped, staggering back against the wall. What did you do? Marcus asked, though the pain was already fading, replaced by a strange, tingling sensation. Sanguivori don't just drink blood, Alara said, her voice different now, stronger. We process it, amplify it. Your antibodies are in my system now, and my body is replicating them, making them stronger. She looked at her hands in wonder. I can feel it. Your adaptability, your human stubborn refusal to die. It's in me now. 3 Cravathi warriors poured through, their insected bodies covered in black chitin armor. They moved with terrible speed, their stinger-tipped tails already dripping with venom. Alara stepped between them and Marcus. Her hands, which had been gentle and careful moments before, now gripped a surgical laser like a weapon. You want him, she said, and her voice carried an edge that Marcus had never heard before. You'll have to go through a vampire first. The Cravathi warriors didn't hesitate. They moved like liquid death, their multiple legs carrying them across the medical bay in seconds. The lead warrior's tail whipped forward, aimed directly at Alara's heart. She twisted impossibly fast, the stinger missing her by inches, and slashed with the surgical laser. The beam cut through chitin armor like paper, and the warrior shrieked in a language that sounded like breaking glass. Marcus tried to get up to help somehow, but his body was still recovering from the extraction process. He felt useless, watching Alara fight alone. Then his engineer's brain kicked in, looking at the room not as a hospital, but as a collection of tools and weapons. The autoclave sterilizer could be overloaded to spray superheated steam. The magnetic resonance scanner could generate an electromagnetic pulse if he reversed the polarity. The IV stands were metal, heavy enough to use as clubs. He ripped the tubes from his arms, ignoring the fresh blood that welled up, and lunged for the nearest control panel. His fingers flew across the holographic interface, years of technical training coming back to him. The Cravathi had superior biology, but humans had always been good at one thing, turning anything into a weapon. The autoclave exploded in a cloud of scalding vapor just as a Cravathi warrior lunged at Marcus. The creature screamed and recoiled, its sensors overwhelmed. Marcus grabbed an IV stand and swung it like a baseball bat, connecting with the warrior's head with a satisfying crack. The creature went down but wasn't dead, already starting to rise again. Ilara was fighting two warriors at once, her movements a blur. But Marcus saw what she couldn't, a fourth Cravathi crawling through the shattered doorway, this one larger than the others, with markings that suggested rank. It was moving toward him, ignoring Ilara entirely. Marcus backed up until he hit the wall, his makeshift weapon raised. The warrior cocked its head, studying him with multifaceted eyes that reflected the red emergency lights. Then it spoke, its mandibles clicking in a way that the ship's translator rendered as words. "The human who survives, the anomaly. You will come with us, or we will kill everyone on this ship." The electromagnetic pulse burst outward, and every piece of electronic equipment in the room died instantly. But more importantly, the Cravathi warrior's communication implants shorted out. Marcus had noticed them during the first attack on his colony, small devices embedded in their carapaces that allowed the hive mind to coordinate their movements. Without that connection, the warriors became confused, disoriented. They had individual intelligence, but they were used to being part of something larger. Separated from the hive mind, they hesitated. Ilara took advantage of that hesitation. She moved like lightning, the surgical laser cutting through two warriors in quick succession. But the larger warrior, the one that had spoken, was faster. Its tail caught her across the ribs, and Marcus heard her cry out in pain. He watched in horror as the venom began to spread, dark lines crawling under her pale skin from the wound. Ilara staggered, her glowing eyes dimming. The Cravathi venom was designed to kill, and even a sanguivore couldn't survive it. Except Ilara had something in her system that no sanguivore had ever had before, human antibodies, Marcus's antibodies. The dark lines stopped spreading. They hung there for a moment, and then they began to recede. Ilara's eyes blazed brighter than ever, and when she looked up at the Cravathi warrior, she was smiling. "That tickled," she said, and launched herself at the creature with renewed fury. The fight was over in seconds. The large warrior tried to retreat, but Ilara was relentless, driving it back through the shattered door into the corridor beyond. Marcus followed, still holding his IV stand, and found Captain Vora and her security team locked in combat with more Cravathi throughout the ship. "Captain," Marcus shouted, "they're communication implants. They're vulnerable to electromagnetic pulses." She barked orders in her native language, and her crew began using their weapons in short, controlled bursts designed to generate EMP effects. The Cravathi warriors faltered, their coordinated assault falling apart into individual confusion. But then every screen on the ship flickered to life simultaneously, showing the same image. A massive Cravathi, easily twice the size of the warriors, its carapace covered in bioluminescent markings that pulsed with an otherworldly light. "Enough," it said, and its voice carried the weight of thousands speaking as one, the hive mind itself. "We will cease hostilities, we request parley." "Speak then quickly." "We came to eliminate a threat, but we see now that we have created an opportunity instead. To stop something far worse than us," the hive mind said. "The attack on the human colony transport was not random conquest. We were hunting a rogue faction of our own kind. They stole experimental bioweapons from our breeding chambers and went into hiding. We tracked them to that sector, but they had already moved on. The human colony was simply in the way, collateral damage in a larger war. Children, they plan to use the bioweapons on Earth itself. They want to prove that the Cravathi are meant to conquer, not coexist. And they have chosen humanity as their target because humans are expanding rapidly, settling worlds that the rogues claim as ancient Cravathi territory. Even if this is true, what can we do about it? We're one hospital ship against a faction of Cravathi warriors with bioweapons. The human and the sanguivore together have created something new, a symbiosis. Your blood, sanguivore, carries the human's adaptability now. And you, human, your body has learned to process the sanguivore's regenerative capabilities. Separately, you are formidable. Together, you are immune to the very weapons the rogues plan to use. We're connected now in ways I don't fully understand. Billions of lives hanging in the balance. Where are these rogues hiding? He asked. The hive mind's bioluminescent markings pulsed. The void nebula in the outer reaches. They use stolen cloaking technology to hide their ship. but they must emerge in 3 days to launch their attack. The bioweapon they stole requires a direct trajectory to Earth from their current position. Only a few ship types can survive the journey, and hospital ships happen to be one of them due to our heavy shielding. But why would they let us approach? They will not attack a hospital ship unprovoked. It would turn every species in the galaxy against them. You can get close enough to board them, disable the weapon, and escape before they realize what happened. Yes, the hive mind replied without hesitation. Because you are human, and humans do impossible things when they must, and because the sanguivore beside you has already chosen to stand with you rather than flee. Your species form bonds that defy logic. It is both your greatest weakness and your greatest strength. I've known you for 4 days, and I'm considering infiltrating a ship full of bioweapons with you. We're sharing more than just blood now. Memories, emotions, experiences. When you held my hand through the pain, I felt your courage. When I stood between you and the warriors, you felt my determination. We're becoming something neither of our species has words for. If you two are foolish enough to attempt this, I will take my ship into the Void Nebula. But understand this, if the rogues detect our true purpose, we will all die. There will be no rescue, no cavalry coming to save us. The hive mind provided detailed schematics of the rogue ship, or at least what they remembered of its layout before the rogues went dark. Marcus studied every detail, planning their approach, while Alara worked on synthesizing more of the symbiotic antibodies. They discovered that when they worked together, their efficiency increased dramatically. Marcus could understand medical concepts that should have been far beyond his engineering training. Alara found herself grasping technical solutions with an intuition she had never possessed before. They slept in shifts, but never more than a few feet apart. The symbiosis required proximity to maintain itself, like a flame that would gutter out if separated from its fuel. Neither of them minded. Marcus found comfort in Alara's cool presence, and she sought out his warmth with an almost unconscious need. On the 3rd day, the Mercy's dawn entered the Void Nebula. The viewports showed swirling clouds of purple and green radiation, beautiful and deadly. Sensors struggled to penetrate the interference, but Captain Vora's crew were experts at navigating hazardous space. They moved slowly, carefully, broadcasting medical assistance codes on all frequencies. And then, like a ghost materializing from fog, the rogue Cravathi ship appeared before them. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of the Mercy's dawn, its hull covered in organic-looking armor that seemed to pulse with malevolent life. Weapon ports lined its surface like the eyes of a spider, all aimed directly at them. A transmission came through, the voice harsh and filled with suspicion. "Hospital ship, state your purpose in this sector. We detected elevated readings from your position and came to offer assistance. But only medical personnel. We scan for weapons. Any hostile action will result in immediate destruction." As they prepared to transfer to the rogue ship, Captain Vora pulled them aside. "If you don't return in 2 hours, I'm leaving," she said bluntly. "I won't sacrifice my entire crew for 2 people, no matter how brave. Understood?" "Thank you for getting us this far." The interior of the rogue Cravathi ship was nothing like the clean, organized vessels he had seen in database images. This place was alive in the worst possible way. The walls pulsed with organic matter, veins of bioluminescent fluid running through them like infected blood vessels. The air was thick and humid, carrying the sickly sweet smell of decay mixed with something chemical that made his eyes water. Alara pressed close beside him, her medical scanner held up as if she was actually looking for radiation signatures. 2 Cravathi warriors escorted them deeper into the ship, their multiple legs clicking against the floor in an unsettling rhythm. Neither warrior spoke, but Marcus could feel their hostility radiating like heat from a furnace. They passed through corridors that seemed designed to disorient, twisting and turning without any logical pattern. Marcus tried to memorize the route, but the organic nature of the ship meant that landmarks were useless. Everything looked the same, walls breathing slowly in and out as if the entire vessel was one massive living creature. Finally, they arrived at what appeared to be a medical bay, though calling it that was generous. Cravathi warriors lay on slabs, some missing limbs, others with carapaces cracked and leaking fluid. The wounded watched Marcus and Alara with those unsettling, multifaceted eyes, tracking their every movement. A Cravathi stepped forward from the shadows, larger than the warriors, with markings that suggested it was some kind of medical officer. It spoke in clicking mandibles, and the translator embedded in Marcus's suit rendered the words. "You are the healers from the hospital ship. We have wounded from our battles against the hive minds hunting parties. Prove your skills are not wasted on our enemies. I'll need access to your medical supplies." Marcus watched her work, amazed at how naturally she navigated this hostile environment. Through their connection, he could feel her concentration, her careful balance between actually helping the wounded and searching for information about the bioweapon. While Alara worked, Marcus pretended to catalog the wounded, using his scanner to map the ship's interior. The device was actually a modified sensor array he had built, designed to penetrate the organic shielding and locate energy signatures. If the bioweapon was charged and ready to launch, it would need a massive power source. He found it almost immediately. Deep in the heart of the ship, 3 decks below them, something was drawing enormous amounts of energy. The signature was unlike anything he had seen before, pulsing in a rhythm that seemed almost deliberately threatening. Through their link, Alara felt his discovery. She didn't react outwardly, continuing to seal a warrior's wound with practiced efficiency, but Marcus sensed her acknowledgement. They had found their target. Now they just needed to get to it. "Your healer has skill," the medical officer said, watching Alara work. The hive mind was foolish to let the Sanguivori maintain their neutrality. They should have conscripted all medics to serve them. Politics are irrelevant to medicine, not diplomats begging for scraps at the negotiating table. A klaxon suddenly blared throughout the ship. The medical officer's head snapped up, and all the wounded warriors began to stir. A voice crackled over the ship's communication system, speaking in rapid Cravathi that the translator struggled to keep up with. Hive mind forces detected, multiple ships approaching, all warriors to battle stations. This medical emergency was a trap. If the hive mind found you, it wasn't through us. If your hospital ship fires on us, you die first. Through a viewport, Marcus caught a glimpse of the battle. The Mercy's Dawn was retreating as fast as its engines could manage, pursued by smaller Cravathi attack craft. But beyond them, emerging from the nebula's interference, came a fleet of hive-mind vessels, their weapons already charging. They were brought to what appeared to be a command center, a large chamber filled with tactical displays and communication equipment. A massive Cravathi stood at the center, its carapace covered in scars that spoke of countless battles. This was clearly the rogue leader, the one who had stolen the bioweapons and planned genocide. "The hive mind comes for us at last," the leader said, its voice carrying a tone of satisfaction. "They send their fleet to silence us before we can prove them wrong. Before we can show the galaxy that the Cravathi are still to be feared. Surrender now and maybe they'll show mercy. We will launch our weapon, and even if we die here, Earth will fall. The humans will learn that expansion has consequences. That there are still predators in this galaxy with teeth. A virus designed specifically for human biology, carried by modified spores that will spread across your planet in weeks. Your immune system's precious adaptability will become a curse, attacking your own cells until nothing remains but suffering and death." They had 10 minutes to stop the end of humanity. The ship rocked as a hive-mind weapon scored a direct hit. Alarms blared, and half the tactical displays flickered and died. The rogue leader snarled, barking orders to its crew. The warriors holding Marcus and Alara loosened their grip slightly, distracted by the chaos. It was the opening they needed. Marcus activated the modified scanner he had been carrying, but instead of scanning, he triggered its secondary function, an electromagnetic pulse grenade he had built into its core. The device exploded in a burst of invisible energy, frying every electronic system within 20 meters. The command center went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in that familiar red glow. The Cravathi warriors stumbled, their communication implants shorting out, cutting them off from the collective coordination that made them so deadly. Marcus and Alara ran. They didn't know where they were going exactly, but Marcus's scan had mapped the ship's layout. The bioweapon was 3 decks down in the ship's organic core. They sprinted through corridors as the battle raged around them, the ship shuddering with each impact. Warriors tried to stop them, but Alara fought with inhuman speed, her sanguivore nature enhanced by the symbiotic antibodies flowing through her veins. Marcus stayed close, his engineer's mind working frantically. They needed to disable the weapon, but how? He didn't understand Cravathi biotechnology well enough to simply disarm it. They found the chamber housing the bioweapon, and Marcus's blood ran cold. It wasn't a missile or a bomb. It was a living thing, a massive organic pod that pulsed with malevolent purpose. Thousands of spores were visible through its translucent membrane, each one carrying the engineered virus. And surrounding it was a containment field that would kill anyone who tried to approach. The field's energy signature was identical to Cravathi venom, Marcus realized. It was designed to kill any species that came close, ensuring the weapon couldn't be sabotaged. But he and Alara weren't just any species anymore. They were something new, something the rogues hadn't planned for. "We have to destroy it from inside the containment field," Alara said, already understanding his thoughts through their link. "If we breach it from outside, the spores will release early. They're designed to survive and spread, even if the pod is damaged. We process each other's biology now, Marcus. Your adaptability and my regeneration working together. It's our only chance." The hive mind forces were boarding, but they wouldn't reach this chamber in time. It was up to him and Alara, two people from species that should have been enemies, now bound together in ways that defied explanation. They stepped into the containment field together, hands clasped tight. Pain hit immediately, worse than anything Marcus had experienced during the extraction process. His nervous system screamed as the venom field attacked every cell in his body. Beside him, Alara gasped, her pale skin going even paler. But they didn't fall. Through their link, Marcus felt his antibodies flooding into Alara's system, while her regenerative biology poured into his. They became a circuit, each one processing the poison for the other, neutralizing it, adapting to it. Their hearts beat in synchronization, their breathing matched perfectly. They reached the bioweapon pod. Marcus pulled a thermal charge from his belt, one he had grabbed from the Mercy's Dawn's emergency supplies. He placed it against the pod's membrane and set the timer for 30 seconds. It wasn't sophisticated, but it would work. The heat would denature the virus's genetic structure, rendering it harmless, while simultaneously destroying the spore's ability to germinate. But 30 seconds inside this field would kill them. Marcus could feel his body beginning to fail, his immune system overwhelmed despite the symbiosis. Alara was in worse shape, her enhanced regeneration working overtime but losing ground. "We need to get out," she gasped, pulling him toward the field's edge. They stumbled out just as the charge detonated. The bioweapon pod burst in a flash of heat and light, the spores inside withering instantly, their deadly potential eliminated. Marcus collapsed, Alara falling beside him. The containment field was gone, but the damage had been done. He could feel his organs shutting down, his body pushed beyond its limits. Alara's hand found his in the darkness. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice weak. "Can you feel it? We're still connected. As long as we're together, we're still alive." His heart beat for both of them. Her lungs breathed for both of them. They were becoming one organism distributed across two bodies. The chamber door burst open, and hive mind warriors flooded in, followed by soldiers wearing Captain Vora's ship insignia. The battle was over. The rogues were defeated, and through the viewport Marcus could see Earth in the distance, safe and unaware of how close it had come to annihilation. Captain Vora knelt beside them, her reptilian features showing something Marcus had never seen before, genuine concern. She barked orders in her native language, and medical personnel rushed forward with equipment. But when they tried to separate Marcus and Alara, moving them to different stretchers, both of them cried out in pain so intense that the medics immediately stopped. "Don't separate them," one of the sanguivore doctors said, studying the readings on his scanner with wide eyes. "Their biological systems have integrated. Look at this neural mapping. Their nervous systems are sharing pathways. If you pull them apart now, you'll kill them both." Her thoughts mixed with his, memories bleeding together until he couldn't tell where she ended and he began. He remembered things he had never experienced, the cold loneliness of being sanguivore, living for centuries while watching shorter-lived species age and die. The careful distance her people maintained, afraid to form attachments that would only bring pain. And she experienced his memories, The warmth of human connection, the reckless joy of forming bonds without thinking about tomorrow. The way humans threw themselves into relationships knowing they might get hurt, but believing the connection was worth the risk. The medical bay of the Mercy's dawn became their world for the next week. Doctors from a dozen species came to study them, this impossible symbiosis that shouldn't exist. The Sanguivori delegation was fascinated by how Alara's biology had incorporated human adaptability. Human medical officers couldn't believe how Marcus's cellular structure had merged with Sanguivori regenerative properties. They had become something new, something that existed in the space between two species. The hive mind sent representatives as well, not warriors this time, but diplomats. They stood at the foot of the medical bed where Marcus and Alara lay, still too weak to stand but growing stronger each day. "The rogue faction has been eliminated," the lead diplomat said, its translator rendering the clicks and whistles into precise English. "Their weapon is destroyed. Earth is safe." The hive mind wishes to extend formal apologies to the human species for the actions of the rogues, and to offer reparations for the colony that was lost. Sarah and Tom, little Maya who wanted to be a xenobiologist, they're gone. And the Cravathi will share our biomedical research with human scientists, unrestricted. Perhaps in time, the knowledge we provide will save lives as you saved billions by stopping the rogues. Through their link, he felt her compassion, her understanding that holding onto hatred would only poison him. It didn't mean forgetting, didn't mean the deaths didn't matter, but it meant choosing to move forward rather than drowning in the past. "Okay," Marcus said finally. "We accept your offer, but I want something else too. I want the Cravathi to establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. Real peace, not just the absence of war. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, the whole thing. Make something good come from all this death. The galaxy will benefit from having humans among the spacefaring species." "For the heroes," she said, placing the gift on their bedside table. "Though I suspect you'll both be tired of that word soon enough. Real courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. You two walked into a death trap together, barely knowing each other, because it was the only way to save your people. That's the kind of story that gets told for generations. They could separate now, move to different rooms without pain, but the connection remained. They could feel each other's emotions across distances, sense when the other was in distress or joy. Their lifespans had equalized somehow, Marcus's human metabolism slowing to match Alara's sanguivori longevity, while her body had gained the ability to tolerate warmth and even enjoy sunlight in small doses. The most surprising change was physical. Marcus found he needed less sleep and could go longer without food. Alara discovered she could eat regular meals now, her modified biology processing nutrients the way his did. They were still themselves, still distinct individuals, but they had each gained aspects of the other's nature. News of what happened spread across the galaxy faster than light could travel. The story of the human and the sanguivori who became something new, who stopped a genocide through their connection, captured imaginations across countless worlds. They received messages from thousands of species, some thanking them, others simply curious about this unprecedented biological merger. But the attention also brought problems. Scientists wanted to study them, to understand how the symbiosis worked and whether it could be replicated. Military strategists saw potential weapons applications. Corporations offered obscene amounts of money for samples of their blood. Everyone wanted something from them. "I just want a normal life," Marcus confessed one night as they sat together watching the stars stream past the viewport. "Is that even possible now? But I know I don't want to spend the next few centuries being poked and prodded by researchers." The sanguivori have a saying, "The brightest star attracts the most observers, but sometimes the star just wants to shine in peace." We're much better at medicine and brooding dramatically. But then again, a month ago he would never have imagined surviving impossible poison, infiltrating an enemy ship, or becoming biologically bonded to someone from another world. Captain Vora found them a solution. "There's a colony on the edge of explored space," she explained, pulling up a star chart. "Designation, Haven's Landing. It's a mixed-species settlement, humans and others living together. They need a medical facility, and their infrastructure is always breaking down." A doctor and an engineer would be valuable there. More importantly, it's far enough from the core worlds that you'd have privacy. No research teams, no military recruiters, just settlers trying to build new lives. A chance to use their unique abilities to help people, but on their own terms. A place where they could explore what they had become without the weight of galactic attention. "We'll take it," they said simultaneously, then grinned at their synchronization. The journey to Haven's Landing took 2 weeks. The Mercy's Dawn dropped them off with enough medical supplies to stock a small clinic and engineering tools to handle most common repairs. The colony administrator, a grizzled human woman named Chen Wei, greeted them at the landing pad. "You're the famous ones," she said, looking them up and down with a critical eye. "The human-vampire hybrid couple everyone's talking about. And before you ask, yes, we respect privacy here. Half our settlers came here to escape something. We don't pry into people's business as long as they contribute to the community." It was a prefabricated structure, weathered by the colony's harsh winds, with equipment that looked like it had been salvaged from a dozen different ships. But it had good bones, and Marcus could already see how to improve it. Ilara walked through the space with a critical eye, mentally cataloging what supplies they'd need to order. "It's perfect," Marcus said. Their first patient arrived within an hour. A young SS Rath child, no more than 5 standard years old, had fallen and broken her arm. Her mother was frantic, speaking in rapid hisses that the translator struggled to keep up with. Ilara calmed them both with practiced ease, her gentle manner transcending species barriers. She set the bone while Marcus distracted the child with stories about Earth, about oceans and forests and animals she had never seen. As days turned into weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Marcus would work on the colony's infrastructure during the day, fixing water purifiers and power generators, while Ilara ran the clinic. In the evenings, they'd swap, with Marcus helping with medical emergencies while Ilara used her enhanced strength to handle heavy repairs. The colonists quickly learned that it didn't matter which one you went to for help. Through their link, they shared knowledge and skills, each one drawing on the other's expertise. They made a home in a small apartment above the clinic. It wasn't much, just 2 rooms and a tiny kitchen, but it was theirs. At night, they'd sit on the small balcony and watch Haven's Landing's 3 moons rise over the alien landscape. Sometimes they'd talk for hours, sharing stories from their vastly different lives. Other times they'd sit in comfortable silence, content just to be near each other. 6 months after arriving, they received an unexpected visitor. A young human man, barely 20, with burns covering half his body. He'd been injured in a mining accident on a nearby asteroid. The local medical facility there couldn't handle the damage, so they'd sent him to Haven's Landing in a last desperate attempt to save his life. Marcus and Ilara worked together for 18 hours straight, using every trick they had learned. They used sanguivore regenerative techniques combined with human skin grafting. They shared their own symbiotic blood, carefully filtered and processed, to boost his immune system. At one point, when the patient's heart stopped, they synchronized their own heartbeats and used their linked bioelectric field to restart it. When the young man finally stabilized, sleeping peacefully in recovery, Marcus and Ilara collapsed in their apartment. They were exhausted, covered in blood and medical gel, but they'd saved him. They'd taken someone who should have died and given him a chance at life. "This is what we were meant to do," Ilara said, her head resting on Marcus's chest, listening to his heartbeat. Not being celebrities or research subjects, just helping people one patient at a time. I had no idea my life was about to change completely. No idea I'd meet you, become bonded to you, save Earth, or end up running a clinic on the edge of nowhere. You didn't ask to be connected to me forever. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, even if it happened in the worst possible way. Medical professionals see too much death, too much suffering. We were supposed to maintain distance, stay clinical. But humans don't work that way, do they? You form connections instantly, without thinking about the consequences. I spent 2 centuries keeping everyone at arm's length, afraid to feel too much. Then you held my hand through your pain, and I realized I'd been missing out on something essential. Connection isn't a weakness, it's what makes us strong.